I hope everybody had just the most wonderful Independence Day weekend that they could actually have, and that it met all of your expectations. I know sometimes you come up on a holiday, and well, you know this a lot with what you have for hopes usually at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and you have all of these plans, and you spend weeks, if not months, on getting everything together. You have family over, and then things just go awry. it's I remember one time years ago I decided to be the host for Thanksgiving and had a similar situation. And after that, I never wanted to be the Thanksgiving host again. It was one of those days that you wish you could reverse and do all over again. If I get a chance a little later, I'll talk about the highlight of my 3-day weekend, which was actually started Thursday. Thursday after I got out of work. That was the Patriots Night presentation, and I had a chance to participate in that at the College of Southern Idaho at the Performing Arts Center. We'll have some thoughts on that a little later. If we don't get to them today, believe me, I'll be talking about it throughout the course of the week because it was perhaps in my lifetime. I mean, I'll be 53 in October. It was, I believe, the greatest event that I've ever participated in, and so I'll have some thoughts, obviously, about that at some point. A couple of other things I wanted to mention. Ketchum. There is a discussion going on in one of our neighboring cities about what we should do with people who leave dogs in hot automobiles this time of year. And of course, by gosh, last week was just dreadful. And according to police in Ketchum, they're getting as many as 10 calls per day about dogs left in hot cars or trucks. Folks, we'll get to that a little later, but use some common sense, for crying out loud. I was only going to be in the store a minute, and then I ran into Joe, and we got talking about playing cards, and then I got on a long line of well, you know what? These things happen. Use your brains for a change. Tell you what, bring the brain with you to the store, leave the dog at home. And also a couple of other notes, too. If you happen to see the race, the NASCAR race yesterday, the response from the NASCAR racing community, well, the fan base, which is really what's important, who were told to leave their Southern themed flags at home. I won't say Confederate flag because there were numerous Confederate flags. We're talking, a great many battle flags, state flags, etc. Well, the crowd answered. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I do want to open up, though, with something I happened to see yesterday in one of our local publications. There's a newspaper here in the Magic Valley. They still have a print version, but it's just creaking along. They set up little tables when you go into Fred Meyer or some of the other local grocery stores. They'll beg you to buy a subscription to the paper version, which tells you that things aren't going at all well over there. And they're not happy that I've been gloating about it on air. I'm not gloating about it. I'm just telling you, if you would actually be, I don't. One of the reasons I don't have to be balanced on the air is because I'm trying to provide balance to what establishment media does. And they come at this with what they would call their own particular biases. Over the weekend, there was a story in the Washington Post. I'm going to divert here again and just go off down the rabbit hole one more time to give you an idea, though, what really mainstream media is all about. And it was called Worst Week in Washington. It's a regular feature they publish in the Washington Post every weekend. They pick somebody, could be a coach, could be a politician, anybody in public life who may have had a bad week. And they selected Donald Trump. And of course, despite the fact that he supposedly had the worst week in Washington, he's surging in polls. But they won't acknowledge that. Yet they took a photograph of the man, and I've seen this photograph repeated over and over and over again. Now, he may be one of the most photographed Americans of the 20th and 21st centuries. So you have a huge library of photographs that you can use when you're talking about the guy. Well, can I add this? That means you don't have to take the most unbecoming one, and that shows your bias when you continually use the most unbecoming photograph you can find over and over and over again. And a little later, we'll talk about the public's view of media in this country, and it's at an all-time low, and it's not getting better. And you know what? They will not change their behavior. They will not modify it. They're like the labor union that refuses to take, a couple of small concessions in order to keep their jobs, and they would rather see the jobs go overseas and then complain about how nasty the company was. So I saw this on the letters page yesterday of the local newspaper. Letter to the editor. Refugees want same freedoms we enjoy. Well, I don't know about that. I'm sure some of them do. I'm not going to, we can't, I'm not going to say everybody that's coming here wants to change our culture to meet their needs. That's not necessarily true. So we can say some want freedoms, some would rather conquer. We'll leave it at that. But the writer says a response to those who oppose the refugee program that CSI sponsors. And also, I'm going to diverge here again just a little bit. I digress. Last week, I got an email from a friend. Do you know that this fellow, Tsitsi, that runs the refugee center here, apparently he's also doing the same thing for the state of Idaho. So resettling people, he's listed on a website there. There's an email address and a telephone number for his office in Utah, which would mean that this is really big business for him, and that is bringing people here, and so he's profiting quite well. I guess he's going to be expanding into several states before he's done. I also had a note the other day from some people who actually asked for, through a Freedom of Information request, just asked for a distribution of where the money goes that the local people receive for this program, and the FOIA request apparently was denied. The writer at this letter, at Letters to the Editor page, says, I have met many of the refugees and know them as wonderful people who only want the same freedoms and opportunities that we enjoy in this free land. We must not react, I fear, to the hate in the world, but instead make friends with the refugees who have come to Twin Falls. Can I say something? It appears that everybody has made friends with them. I mean, for the most part, we can't, again, qualify it by saying everybody. But for the most part, it seems that, everybody gets on quite well. We're not talking about those who are already here. We're talking about what may be coming here and what we don't know about them, and that's what we have been talking about. Stop misrepresenting what's going on, and that's what happens when you're dealing with the American left. They keep trying to deflect, and they keep trying to go to some other issue to avoid the actual argument. I had to cite, though, the very end of this. The writer, as we celebrate the birth of this free nation, says, let us remember the words inscribed on the base of the Statue of Liberty. They must be taken into our hearts and our actions if this land is to continue to be great. Well, first of all, you know what's inscribed at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty? There is no actual government policy that is inscribed there. It's not the Declaration of Independence. It's not the Constitution. There's no ordinances, no laws, or fees, regulations, whatever we're talking about. There's a poem. A poem, by the way, is not, the woman's name was Lazarus, right? Emma Lazarus, was that her name? And she wrote a poem, and that is now inscribed at the base. And it reads, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Yes, it's a poem. It's not government policy. But it also refers to these immigrants as wretched refuse. Good golly, and you thought Donald Trump was being mean-spirited. Holy mackerel. And then it's signed by Corrine Gilbert, Twin Falls. So once again, liberals conflating a poem with government policy, and again, a poem that refers to these people as wretched refuse. You know what? If we're going to have to burn all the Confederate flags and tear down Robert E. Lee's name all across the country, then we're going to have to do the same with this poem, referring to these people who's obviously, from a leftist viewpoint, all cultures are equal, and they're all equal too, and it's mean-spirited to call them wretched refuse. How about flotsam and jetsam? Would that work any better for you? Pieces of protoplasm. What are we going to try out here? Well, yeah, but see, we're liberals, and so adopting that poem is for our benefit, so it doesn't matter if she referred to these people as wretched refuse. In other words, garbage. Bring me your garbage so we can put them to work in our mills, our sweatshops, and our factories for a cut-rate price so we can undercut the American worker. I got it figured out. It's 69. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It is coming up on 8:17, and I should point out, if you'd like to reach the program this morning, you can give us a call, 736-0300. That's 736-0300. And, of course, you can drop me an email at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. That is bill.colley, Colley, at townsquaremedia.com. And of course, I generally give highest consideration to telephone calls, but I will reference emails that come in occasionally during the course of the show as well. It's just that in real time, there's often somewhat of a lag with all of those. Some of the other things I'd like to address this morning, we have, as I say, Donald Trump taking a lot of heat because of what he said. I wrote a piece for our website over the weekend, newsradio1310.com, and I break down the media outrage versus what Trump actually said, because Trump actually qualified in his remarks when he said that there are people who are coming here who are criminals, and I think he used the word rapists as well. That would be a criminal. But he then qualified it saying, and I'm aware that some of them are very nice people, meaning that there's a lot of good people too that you'd come across in this situation. And of course, over the weekend, an illegal alien deported 5 times, living in a sanctuary city, shot and killed a woman along a pier while he claims he was shooting at ducks or something like that, which first of all, he was breaking the law in that sense. And this woman standing on the pier talking with family, bam, she's dropped dead just like that. So the Democrats, though, would rather have his vote than her alive, and so this is the result. And then they say, well, that's just an anecdotal bit of evidence. I read a piece this morning from the state of North Carolina where they have documented 1,500, and many of these are child rapes, committed by people who are here in this country illegally. Some of those, not all, some of those may come from south of our border. We've got to qualify that. Not all, some. We've got to always remember we've got to say that instead of just lumping everyone together. But Trump himself pretty much said those things. He was trying to talk a little bit about it over the weekend. The media offense machine is already pretty well ginned up. But he got, I think, treated pretty well. I believe he's speaking with Fox about this. And take a listen to some of his comments for a moment. And maybe you can be the judge as well. And, you might have some thoughts about what he really said or what he really happened to mean in all of this. I was listening to a lot of the conversations from various other Republicans, and there's some doubt as to whether Trump is truly a Republican, but maybe that's not a bad thing either. Here he is taking a few pot shots himself.
Well, it's an honor, but it's a long, long race, and, I'm being hit from every side. I'm just trying to make America great again. I didn't need to do this. I wanted to do it because I see what's going on in the country. And I've always said if you're a successful person, it's very hard to run for office because they come at you at all different sides. And even if everyone loves you, you have 40% of the people that hate you. So that's not a good thing for a business.
And he was speaking with Tucker Carlson and crew on Fox News Weekend, the morning show on Fox. And he was referring to the fact that despite all of the media hysteria, he has shot up in the polls now. He is the number 2 candidate among Republican voters surveyed in the last few days. Gosh, I bet even among a lot of Democrats, they're saying, you know what? I'm sick of somebody taking my job, too. This Trump guy might just be right. 20 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you. I've got more on this coming up in just a couple of minutes. So this Trump fellow, speaking about this situation in San Francisco, which you want to talk about the timing of this, really bad for Lefty. If a young man and a scoundrel walks into a church and shoots dead 9 people, and at home they discover that he's got himself photographed with a Confederate flag, we're told that the flag must be wiped clean from American culture. As if somehow, in the middle of the night when he was sleeping, the flag said to him subliminally, "You must go into a black church and kill people." Except the flag can't do that. It's just a piece of cloth. But they'd like to do that. Well, wait a minute. If we're going to eliminate all of this history, this Southern history from the United States because of that situation, which is unrelated. The guy's a racist, and he went in and he killed a bunch of people. He adopted a flag as his symbol, and some other symbols too as well. But that's not what most people do. So you've got that argument raging. Well, okay, if we're going to have this type of argument where we say, well, this because of that, then if we have one woman killed by a criminal illegal alien, then we've got to get rid of them. We've got to send them all back. Using simple logic that you get from the left, this is comparing apples and apples. Donald Trump reacting to the shooting.
Well, I think it's so sad. An incredible young woman shot right in front of her father. Her father was standing there watching. I saw the brother today, and, you know, you can never be the same when a thing like that happens. Never, no matter what happens, you can never be the same. And this is something that should have never taken place. He was sent out of the country many times. He was a violent person. And we have many cases like this that, you know, nobody wants to talk about it. It seems like I'm sort of the whipping post because I bring it up. And I don't understand whether you're liberal, whether you're conservative, whether you're Republican, Democrat. Why wouldn't you talk about a problem? There's tremendous crime, and it's the, you know, illegal immigration is just incredible. And, you know, you talk about terrorism and the terrorists, they're going to come in from the southern border, too.
As a caller told me last week, the crime starts when they cross the border illegally. So therefore, they are criminals from the get-go. Can we establish that? That's why we call, well, the left says, undocumented. Look, a guy who goes in and robs a bank at gunpoint, he's not making an undocumented withdrawal. A guy selling crack cocaine outside an elementary school, he's not an undocumented pharmacist. Can we make this any clearer to people out there? Well, of course not. Not if they want the votes of these people so that they can continue to pass along, or the illusion that they're going to be giving everybody a free lunch in exchange for those votes, which is what this really comes down to. There are other people in the Republican field who have been critical of Donald Trump as they try to curry favor with the mainstream media. Trump is responding to some of that.
Well, I know Pataki well, and, you know, he's a sad figure. He's got 0 in the polls, and he was a terrible governor of New York. Terrible. If he would have run again, he would have failed. He wouldn't have gotten anything. So he was a failed governor. And, you know, as far as Rubio, he's very weak on immigration, and I've been saying that for a long time about him. He's weak on immigration. I respect Ted Cruz for the view that he's got. I mean, he was really out there and strong on it, and I shouldn't say this because I assume he's an opponent, but the fact is he was very brave in coming out. And, you know, when I look at somebody like Perry, who was the governor there for a long period of time, well, he could have done something a little bit, maybe a lot more in terms of protecting people, because, again, the crime is rampant.
And does anyone disagree with that? Did you, by the way, see the figures from Chicago? I mean, and I saw them after Saturday night going into Sunday morning, 81 shootings. The weekend wasn't even done yet. 81 shootings. Crime is rampant. Are you going to disagree with Trump on that? I had an email from a friend of mine who lives just north of Syracuse, New York. Chicago, what, 3 million people? Syracuse, 150,000? They had 11 shootings there in that little city over the course of the weekend. We're not making this up. I mean, cities are burning, and they're going to burn all summer long. Speaking of Ted Cruz, he's one of the few Republicans who does have some nice things to say still about Donald Trump.
I like Donald Trump. He's bold, he's brash. And I get that it seems the favorite sport of the Washington media is to encourage some Republicans to attack other Republicans. I ain't going to do it. I'm not interested in Republican on Republican violence. The Washington cartel doesn't believe we need to secure the borders. The Washington cartel supports amnesty. And I think amnesty is wrong. And I salute Donald Trump for focusing on it. He has a colorful way of speaking. It's not the way I speak. But I'm not going to engage in the media's game of throwing rocks and attacking other Republicans. I'm just not going to do it.
So there you have it. But the only other person in the Republican field right now who's actually showing some semblance of decency towards Mr. Trump, the others all running to try and please the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSDNC, and the like. 829, Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story. It's 70. Not really going to be as scorching today as it has been the last several days. Just to let you know that the weather over the next several days is positively nice. Even may have a nice rainstorm or two coming along on Thursday, which some people are probably thinking we could use. And it won't really warm back up again until Sunday or so of next week. Randy Staples is going to be joining us in a little over 10 minutes from Idaho Weekly Briefing. He's got a lot to talk about today. Hey, get this. United Methodists have voted to apologize over the Columbia River Treaty because they say that even though that, Jesus said, I am the way, they feel that perhaps they wronged people of other faiths who were already living throughout this region when the first European types arrived. Randy has written about that as well. We've got plenty more coming up. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on KLIX. I just want to take a few minutes and because it quickly starts to become old news, which it really shouldn't. But on Thursday, I had the opportunity to participate in what they call Patriots Night, which is not a yearly. Well, it's almost yearly. It's almost a yearly event that takes place, and of course, it honors the fallen troops from Idaho and really across the region. And it's also a fundraiser for a scholarship fund named in honor of Sergeant Chris Workman, who was an Idaho man who lost his life at war. And really the event last year, I'm told, was people were just they were blown away because Oliver North came and spoke at the event. And every year they try to do something unique, a little different. And this year, the real draw was the band Madison Rising, and they made a stop here on their way to Las Vegas. Although they made a stop at Culver's as well. They got a plug in for that. Apparently they like hamburgers, which, a lot of rock bands are eating the tofu. So it's nice to have somebody who's a bit more traditional. And they are very traditional. They're very patriotic. The lead singer, Dave Bray, is a veteran of the U.S. Navy and just has a passion for the American flag and really for all things about traditional America. But they are very talented musicians. They did two sets while they were on stage, and it was just gave you goosebumps sometimes. And also, Miss Idaho, Kaylee Wright, performed Fields of Gold, and very much the same. Just a beautiful voice, beautiful song. And when she was doing this, I walked to the back of the auditorium just to hear the acoustics. And they put up a large screen on stage. And on the screen, they were actually able to put up photographs, and these photographs would identify who the various, well, our honored dead, who they happened to be, and so they had this montage that was flashing on the screen as she was singing. It was all in all, perhaps the greatest thing. And I have been involved with many, many big events over the years. I was involved in a political fundraiser some years ago with George Allen, the son of the football coach, not the coach himself, former senator and governor from Virginia. And I was involved with George Allen and some other people in putting together a program as a fundraiser for a small political action committee, and really had a wonderful time doing that. We did a big picnic at an old barn where they actually usually do country acts, and we had 1,400 people show up for the event. It was just mind-boggling. We only had expected about 400, and they showed up on a really hot day, and it was similar to what the weather was here on Friday. And then I've been at a couple of Tea Party rallies where I've had an opportunity to speak to a couple of thousand people, and I've been to some of the larger rallies where there've been 1.5 million people. And I was at the Glenn Beck event 5 years ago where there were 600,000 people outside the Washington Monument. But to actually participate and be on stage in a large event like this, I rarely ever get such an opportunity. And it really was, it's the highlight of my time. And I'm in my 7th month in Idaho now. It's the highlight of my life since I came here. 837, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. They had a lovely display set up out in the lobby. And these were memorials, miniature memorials to many of the troops that we've lost. And you got to meet the families, and we got to meet some of the people who were in the crowd in the audience afterward, because we had some picture-taking sessions in the lobby. And the band went out and mixed freely with everyone. How often does that happen? If you went to see a concert from any other major rock band, they wouldn't be out in the lobby afterwards getting photographs, shaking hands, and talking with the crowd. And then just as quickly the band had to leave. They were doing 2 shows over the course of a couple of days in Las Vegas. And then this summer they are on their way to Asia. They are going to be entertaining at Marine Corps bases in South Korea and Japan. The only other band I can think of that has such a reputation is the Lieutenant Dan Band, which is fronted by Gary Sinise, the actor. Between these two, and just marvelous. But they even did music by Grand Funk Railroad, which goes back to my childhood. We're looking back 40 years ago to a particular era but they do it very, very well. And then they close the show with a Star-Spangled Banner. And there was a fellow who served 30 years in the U.S. Navy, and he was telling me in the green room, he said, this is the way I think that the Star-Spangled Banner was meant to be sung. It's a modern version, that's true. You got to remember the original ballad is put to an old English drinking song when it comes to the music. And we all grew up listening to John Philip Sousa marches, and maybe that's what we think all patriotic music should be like. But it's I think sometimes it's great to hear it reinterpreted. And if you go to our Facebook page, our News Radio 1310 KLIX Facebook page, I have actually posted a video of the actual singing of the national anthem, and the crowd really wrapped up and involved in it too as well. And I would hope that if you get a chance, you take a look at that. The band just did amazing work, and they were selling some T-shirts and some other items that they had brought along with them as souvenirs, all made in the USA. Nothing made on foreign shores. Truly American. 20 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Randy Staples from Idaho Weekly Briefing is up next. Please stick around.